Okay, thank you for joining us this afternoon on Time Space Visualiser, where we are focusing on the missing episodes of Doctor Who. I'm very lucky now to have someone who is a little heard voice, having had a couple of parts in Doctor Who and suffers from the missing episode syndrome. This person is a British Soap Award winner, director, producer, author, actor. Please give your round of applause at home for Kay Patrick.
Thank you.
Kay, it's lovely. Thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure.
How are you doing in these very odd times in which we find ourselves?
Feeling very odd. It is strange, isn't it? You wonder what it will all be like when it's over.
Yes, that's it. It's one would hope for a slightly changed world, maybe a slightly kinder world. Who knows?
I hope so.
Yeah, I mean,
certainly a more united world.
Well, that would be wonderful. That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
If nothing else, that would be fantastic. It's like sort of science fiction in itself, in a way. It's
almost like a very bad B movie where like War of the Worlds, when the Martians come in and they're about to annihilate the whole of the human race. But you see, in a bad B movie, they don't succeed.
No, and they won't. We will get there.
Get
there. Now, I know over the years, you've done so many different things, not least of which was your huge stint on Coronation Street,
yes.
for which you did win your British Soap Award winner. So just to give people an idea of the fact that actually there are things beyond the world of Doctor Who. Yes. I'm guessing since you've spent so long doing those roles as director and producer as well as everything else, that's something you've really enjoyed.
Yes, and the other thing I've done is I've worked across the board in different media. I've worked in radio drama, which I absolutely love. I've done television, obviously as a director and as a producer, but mainly a director. And I've directed in the theatre. So, I mean, that's having acted in the theatre many years ago. So that's been great. And then to actually write the novel, which took quite a lot of doing. So, yeah, it's been good. I like a challenge.
Very clearly, and it certainly seems to have kept you busy.
It has.
Now, as you know, our focus this afternoon is all about Doctor Who, all about the missing episodes. It's often thought of as rather short-sighted of the BBC to have sort of ditched as many old black and white programs as they have. At what stage were you aware that a couple of your episodes were indeed sort of gone, possibly for good?
Well, really, I never knew, until I got it. The Doctor Who Society got in touch not that long ago, a few years ago. So no, I had no idea, but I wasn't surprised. I mean, at the time, I think I did Doctor Who and the Savages in '66. I'm not sure, but at the time, although it was a popular program, it's nothing like it is now, and nobody could have foreseen that. Really, nobody could have foreseen that it would be still going. How many years later?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, we're creeping very quickly up to the 60th anniversary mark. So.
It's amazing, isn't it? It really is. And that it's so popular still all over the world. It's just astonishing.
Yes. And of course, the only other thing that really comes close is Coronation Street in itself. So you can hand on heart say you've worked on two legendary TV.
Absolutely. I'm very honoured to do so. Yeah. Yeah.
So your initial appearance in Doctor Who does exist. You were in 2 episodes of The Romans.
I was.
I mean, how much is Popea? And actually, in itself, although a relatively small role, you do get rather a nice plot to poison Barbara because of
a wicked woman. I'm a wicked woman. It was fun. And then the next year, a very different kind of character. A rather scatty, silly character, so it was quite nice to have that. Yeah,
two very different things. What do you remember about working with people like? I mean, you had William Hartnell, Jacqueline Hill, William Russell. What do you recall about working with them?
Well, I know William Hartnell is known as an irascible character. I thought he was lovely. It was his birthday while I was doing it, and the producer had organised for him to go out for lunch, and with obviously Jacqueline and and so on. And he insisted that I went too. And I thought that was really kind. So he was very, very kind to me, but he wasn't a well man. Certainly he wasn't by Doctor Who and the Savages, really. And he did have problems with lines and things, but I and of course he was a very, very good actor. And obviously the other two were delightful. You know, people were very kind to me. They probably realised I was an idiot.
So back in those days, I mean, what led you to get those roles? Was it simply a case of an agent putting you forward, or was
I think I wrote to Christopher.
Yeah.
Out of the blue, and out of the blue he saw me, and out of the blue he gave me Popea, which was wonderful, because I hadn't done a lot. Well, I don't think I'd done any television before then. I'm not sure. I may have done Crossroads at one point, which was a spit and a cough. And then he very kindly cast me the year after in a different role, which was nice. It was good. Very kind. Yes. He must have thought I was all right.
There must have been something, otherwise you would not have been asked back. No one.
No,
but you know more than
anything. One of the things I think that did get me asked back was when I first started acting. I was doing, after going to RADA, I went into rep, and it was twice nightly, once weekly. And it was very hard. And if something went wrong, you didn't, you covered, you were able to help your fellow actors out and so on. It stood me in good stead for Doctor Who, because that was on film and you couldn't do retakes. You couldn't stop and say, oh, could I do that again? You had to. And of course, poor Bill, his memory wasn't that brilliant. So you were able to help, with that experience behind me, I was able to help a little bit. And you certainly, as I say, never stopped and said, could we do a retake? Or, no. Oh, I'm sorry, I think I forgot my lines. You got on with it.
You cracked on. The first one, the Romans, you were at Riverside, which
I think we were, yes.
Yeah, notoriously not a huge space. How did you find working in such a small area?
Well, of course, not having directed, I wasn't aware of the logistical problems, but I was aware that when we were running up and down corridors, which there was a lot of in that, it was the same corridor. So you'd run down one, you'd turn around and run back with a different sort of background in the. So I remember that very well. Yes, and of course it was. It had some, like Derek Francis, terrific comedy actors.
Yes. Oh yes, yeah. I mean, Derek Francis really carries that. There was
Derek Francis. Sorry, yes.
It is unusual in that for Doctor Who at the time, it was very reliant on comedy and on the comic element in that particular story, the Romans.
It was unusual.
Were you aware of how different it was from the rest of Doctor Who at the time?
No, as an actor of early 20s, I was very selfish and very self-centered and was only aware of my own problems. So no, I wasn't really. You're not, well, I am now, sort of objective, but I certainly wasn't then.
Was it something was Doctor Who something you'd seen?
No, I don't know why I wrote to Christopher out of the blue. I really don't. It's just lucky for me. So much luck is involved for an actor. It really is. If your letter arrives on the desk at the right time,
yes,
and if it doesn't, well, bad luck. You're still the same actor,
Yeah.
So it's a tough life.
I'll bet. So so we're talking back in January 1965. This is very early days of Doctor Who, but it had found its feet by that point, I think, and it was sort of gaining very much in popularity. I mean, you talk about the popularity now, but even then it was building an audience, and it was already kind of well loved. But like you say, it wasn't something you'd particularly seen at that time. When you went to a job, were you aware of these kinds of what was happening around you, or would you turn up, you do a job, and it was very much a job of work?
Oh no, it was never just a job of work, because I loved acting, and I always wanted to do it to the best of my ability. When you were right for an audition, luckily you didn't, or a reading or whatever, you didn't know who else was going, which was, thank goodness. And I was fortunate enough, as I say, to be given a break by Christopher, and that was lovely. Yeah. But I think I wasn't then, because I'd never dreamt of directing, because women didn't direct much in those days, not at all. So I wasn't aware of a director's problems. I am now.
Yes, yes,
But
of course.
I wasn't then. Yeah.
Of course. It I guess that throws a different light on for you, certainly now, having directed and produced. I guess looking back, you would see those things in a very different light than you did at the time.
Yeah. I was aware, in retrospect, many years later, of the limitations for a director like Christopher, the space limitations and so on. So I can appreciate what he achieved.
We talk very briefly, but we'll go on to this. The Savages are the two. I mean, it's missing in its entirety. The whole story is missing.
Yeah.
Which is very sad. It's
quite a strong story, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, and the swan song of course of Peter Purvis,
yeah,
Stephen Taylor, and of course your role in episodes 1 and 2 as Flower, your character. Yes, Flower.
I know. Oh dear.
Giving a guided tour of the city of the elders for Stephen and
right.
Dona. How different did you find working on that one to working on the Romans?
It's hard to tell, really. I think I'd done other bits of television in between, so that perhaps I'd gained a bit in confidence. I tried to make them different because they were very different characters. Popea had the authority and Flower had none, and as I say, was rather scatty.
Yeah.
But I didn't compare them. You know what I mean? And where did we shoot? You might be able to tell me. Where did we shoot the Savages?
Off the top of my head, that one I cannot remember. I should know these things, but anyone that knows me knows I'm terrible for retaining these.
Me too, obviously.
I'm all about the story and how it looks, and how it's been.
Yeah.
All the little facts and figures. I'm afraid I'm not that particular Doctor Who fan.
Me neither.
There'll be people at home yelling right now, and they know all of these things. I'm afraid I'm not that person. No. Were you aware that it was going to be Peter's last story when you were in?
No, I don't think I was. No, I mean I did know of Peter before because his first wife I was at school with, strangely enough.
Right.
Yeah. But no, I wasn't aware of that. Again, you're wrapped up in your own little world, really, and Well, I was.
And what was Peter like to work with as an actor?
Oh, he's a lovely man.
Well, much like yourself, of course, he went on to do other things away from acting.
Yes,
and he's kind of more known for that. But how did you find him to work with as an actor?
Oh, he was superb. Knew exactly what he was doing. Yeah.
That's good to hear. And were there any noticeable differences in the year gap between working on Doctor Who and then coming back for the Savages? Were there any noticeable difference with Bill Hartnell by that point?
Only that I think his memory was a bit worse, not so good for the second one. But again, early 20, you are wrapped up in yourself as an actor. I'm more sensitive now to what's going on around me.
I'm certain. Hey, we were all like that in our 20s, I'm sure.
I know, it's awful, isn't it?
But I mean, some fantastic names that you've worked with in front of the camera on Doctor Who. We talked about Jacqueline Hill, William Russell, you got Maureen O'Brien, Derek.
Yes, dear Maureen, yes.
For you, as you've then gone on and had these other multiple strands to your career, who else stands out for you in terms of someone you've worked with either in front of or behind the camera?
Do you mean on any? Well, anything. Some of my greatest moments were in radio with directing actors like Paul Schofield and Wendy Hiller, and those are things I'll never forget. The Street, the Icons. I mean, how lucky I've been to work with people who knew exactly what they were doing and demanded the same standard from you, which is really good. You didn't muck around, you needed to know what you were doing. So I've been fortunate, really, in working with some very, very good people. And as I say, it raises your standard.
Of course, of course. And how lucky to be able to work with people that do that. You know, very often,
Yes.
very often you hear of directors who have actors who maybe aren't as willing, maybe to kind of to be on board. But if you're all working toward the same end and demanding a certain standard, then
It's
you know,
just, I think the thing is, you need to, first of all, you need to understand the script, and then you need to know what you want. And then you need to know how to communicate that. And because I'm an ex-actor, I did know how to communicate, and I knew what was possible and what wasn't possible. So, and as I say, working with such great actors, I forgot people like Derek Jacobi and so on. You know, I've been very lucky, very lucky.
well, I'm sure you wouldn't have ended up there without the skill and talent that you obviously have. I've really enjoyed some of your. I'm a big radio fan. I listen to a lot of radio for drama, and lap that up. What differences are there between that visual directing for television and the kind of directing that you need to do for radio?
And for theatre, that's different again, because for theatre, you need to get the actors to start building a wall that isn't going to fall down when you start the run, so that you're working together to sort of get the bricks of the character solid and working together so that they're there to fall back on when you're not around and once they start playing every night. With radio, you're asking actors to jump off a cliff, because you might have I did Anna Karenina in two hours, and it was very emotional. And I think we probably had 5 days to do that in. And you need to push your actors to the edge of the cliff and encourage them to jump. And of course, actors are brilliantly brave, absolutely wonderfully brave. And if you give them the confidence to jump, they'll come up with some brilliant things. Television, you've got to I was very nervous when I went into television, because I thought, I've never worked with cameramen, I don't know what to talk. Well, all you do really is tell them the image that you want, not how to do it, because these are superb people.
Yes.
I mean, some of the best crews I've ever worked with were on Coronation Street. And you just need to tell them the mood, the feeling. Well, for me anyway, I'm sure if you've come through a technical background, it's different. And they will create it. And then you need to know when you've got it, so you don't keep on trying to recreate what you've already got.
In that way, what would you say has been your favourite medium to work with?
It is radio. Because there's no egos in radio. You actually get the script, or a writer sends in a script, you actually work with the writer on that script. Then if you can sell it to the drama department, then you get to take it into studio, you do your own casting, you arrange your own music, or you don't arrange your own music, but you get your own music.
Yes, of course.
It's just, and it's a very small team. There's 2 studio managers in the gallery with you, and there's one on the floor doing sound effects on the mic.
Yeah.
And the writer is there, so the writer is involved, and I think it's extraordinarily exciting. And as I say, you see some courageous performances from actors. So in a way, that's my favourite.
Yes, I mean, radio, as I said, I adore radio. Given, however, that your Doctor Who work was very much acting and in the visual medium, would you ever consider, if you were given the opportunity to go back to acting and take a role on Doctor Who as it stands now, would you do it?
No, I wouldn't.
No.
I mean, I went to RADA when I was 16. I won a scholarship. And I would have thought that I would never be able to say, because if I decided that if I went to RADA because I didn't want to be taught how to teach, which most of the other diplomas did give you. I thought, well, if I can't get acting jobs, I don't want to live, which is a little bit excessive. So it's quite interesting for me. And I was at one point given a chance. I'd written a one-woman show and the actress fell out, and I was given it would have been at the Soho Poly, and I was given the chance of stepping into it, and I didn't want to. And I would never, ever have thought that was possible. but it was, and it is. And I love actors. I have enormous respect for what they achieve and for the lives they lead. And no, I would never do it. I very much like working with writers, and then I like realizing that script with the actors.
So so no going back to acting. But what is?
I think I'm well past it now. By the way.
So what does life hold for you at the moment?
Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows what it holds for any of us?
It's very true. Very, very true indeed.
I have no idea. I would like to do some more. I'd like to write another novel. And maybe this is the time to try it.
So tell us about the novel that you have written. I was having a read on the website. It sounds fascinating. What brought the subject to your mind in the first place?
Well, when I decided to give up acting, I was transiting into behind the camera, but it was very much working with writers and reading scripts for television on a freelance basis and giving them a report and my analysis and so on, and hopefully then the script might be taken on by somebody else. And the other thing I was doing research, and BBC television approached me and said, would I research the possibility of them doing a series of Victorian crimes but committed by women? And so I went into the British Museum and the Newspaper Museum, and I did a lot of research. I came up with quite a lot of ideas. And there was no intention of me to write it at that time. And they chose 6. And there was one which fascinated me, which they didn't choose, which I was astonished by, and it kept bothering me. I mean, this is quite a while ago, as you can tell. And it kept coming back, and I'd try something. I'd think, no, that's rubbish. And I'd try something else as a play. No, that's rubbish. And while I was working in radio, I also did a historical documentary based on a murder in the Tower of the James St. Thomas Overbury. But I still didn't do this novel. And then I don't know what kept bringing it to the fore, but it did fascinate me. But I didn't want to write the actual woman. It was the crime that fascinated me. And I didn't like her at all. And if you're centering your character as somebody who's done something bad, you need the audience or the readers to care about her. And I began to see a way through. And I moved it from Victorian times to the Edwardian times because there was a lot of corruption in government at that time. And it was a strange time of movement, like the labour movement or the women's movement. And my central character, because of her birth, and she didn't know who her parents were. She was brought up in an English-speaking convent in France. She had no choices, really. She did actually, when she was 18, the money that nobody told her where it came from for her education stopped. And the Mother Superior said you could either, you've got to work in the kitchen and in the gardens, and that was it. And she'd seen young women working there, just had their life draining away from them. And she thought, no, I'm worth more than that. So she stuck her heels and she refused to eat. And then this man appeared from England, from Harrogate, and he was a solicitor. And he said, I've been instructed to take you over to England. And she still didn't know who her parents were or who he was, really. But her Mother Superior had done a background check and he was secure and so on. So she went to England. And then we follow her life. What I had to do was invent another family, which was an aristocratic Downton Abbey type family. And the head of that family was a sort of almost like a Nelson, Duke of Wellington kind of figure. Yeah. And a public hero. And his son was a bit of a ne'er-do-well. And he comes home in chapter 2 and he finds his father dying, and in fact dies. And as he's dying, Evelyn, my character, can hear him say Montrecourt. And of course, my female character was called Marie Montrecourt. And he starts to get curious about this name that so bothered his father. So he starts some detective work. So we, as a reader, can see Marie's attempts to lead her life and make her choices. And from Evelyn's point of view, we begin to uncover her past and realize she has no choices, really. And that's how the two come together. And I'm told it's a good read.
Wonderful. Well, it is available. I know it's available on Amazon. I know that there are links on your website. I'll include a link I'll include a link at the end of the interview so people can see, because I know that any monies you raise from that is heading for charity.
It goes to Alzheimer's research. Yeah. Yes, because my sister, while I was doing it, was dying of Alzheimer's, and she did read the novel before she died, which is good. But I felt that it is such a terrible disease. Well, they all are, let's face it. But that one is, and it's so distressing for the people around. So
it's particularly cruel, isn't it?
Research.
Yes. Yeah. Well then, before I wrap up, it's been a lovely chat. Can I just ask, what's your overriding memory of your times that you appeared on Doctor Who?
Oh, goodness me. I don't know. Nobody's asked me that. Gratitude for a job, but also the realization I was working with, some of the top people. I mean, Bill Hartnell was, quite something to be working with in my very, early experiences of working on television. So I think, and you're right, there was that sense of it becoming something that was going to, you didn't realize it would last like this, but that was breaking new ground, let's put it that way.
Well, you were right there, almost at the very beginning. So just 2 years after it had started, less than that, and breaking new ground with them. So, Kay Patrick, I'd like to say a huge thank you for chatting with me today. And I know that everybody at home will join me in giving you a massive round of applause. Thank you very much indeed.
Everyone, thank you for your kindness.
Thank you.